book lovers and English learners. Welcome to our November live read along. I'm Lydie Bureau. I'm an English teacher in France, and I'm also the founder of Lydie's Book Club, a book club for learners of English. In this book club, I host live readings and workshops of adaptations of classics of literature and contemporary novels in their original text. I also tend to prioritize books that are written by women. Each month, we read and explore a different book for all levels of English, and 3 times a month, I meet with the members of the book club in a live workshop session via Zoom to discuss the chapters read over that week, so that the members can improve their speaking and critical thinking skills. This is where the magic happened, where you have the chance to meet other book lovers and other members of the book club and share your views on the novel and discuss other topics as well, but mainly have the chance to speak and practice your English. This month, we are reading the A2 plus adaptation of The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. This is a 2022 Penguin Readers Edition. And if you want to know more about the novel and Edith Wharton's work, I invite you to listen to the podcast episode 26 from Lydia's Book Club podcast. So the name of the episode is An Introduction to Edith Wharton and the Age of Innocence. And this podcast is available on YouTube and also on Spotify, on the Spotify podcast called Read in English. You can also find out more about writing The Age of Innocence, so writing the original text here, with the online exhibit on the Mount website. The Mount is the former house of Edith Wharton in Massachusetts in America, and it is now a museum. And you can find the link in the description of this video if you are maybe a student, you're researching on Edith Wharton, or you're just curious. So this is our 4th live reading session of The Age of Innocence, this adaptation. And today we are going to read chapters 9 and 10. And this Saturday, I will host the 2nd live workshop in which we will cover chapters 5 to 8. So chapters that we have read last week. So we are a little bit behind, more or less. But it's going to be interesting to be able to reflect on those chapters. So if you want to attend the next workshop session, you still can do that. So you just need to subscribe to the book club by clicking in the link in the description, and you will find all the upcoming dates and workshops on the subscribing page. Last thing, I'm pleased also to announce that you can now purchase the 4-part live workshop of North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell, which was our October live read along. So we read this book, and I hosted 4 live workshop sessions, and now you can watch the recording of these sessions. You don't need to become a member, you just purchase the workshop set of sessions. And once you purchase the book, the workshop, you need to create your login, and this way you have full access to all the videos on a private space. So you create your login and then you have access to the videos. Don't worry, you will receive emails to guide you and help you. And if you have any questions, you just email me or message me. No, there is no problem about that. I'll be happy to help you if you have any problem. And yeah, again, you can find the link in the description. Right. So that being said, I will do the recap of the previous chapters. So, well, just chapter 7 and 8, which were the chapters that we read um, last week. So, seven, yeah, we lost 7 and 8. Oh, so I'm gonna keep my page for chapter 9. Here we go. So in chapter 7, we meet Newland Archer at the church. He's at the church and he is waiting for his bride, May Welland, because as you've been following the story, Newland is in love with the Countess Olenska, but oh, sorry, bit of light. But she is not available. He's engaged and she is married still, and he convinced her to not divorce her husband. So they are stuck in this impossible situation, this impossible love. So he gets on with his life and he marries May Welland. So he's at the altar and he's looking at the door, waiting for his new bride. And at some point, he sees Mrs. Medora Manson, Mrs. Manson, who is Ellen's aunt, and she is now living with Ellen, the Countess, in Washington. And Mrs. Manson came from Washington to attend the wedding. And when he sees her coming in, he expects that perhaps Ellen is going to um, follow her entering the church. But nobody came in. No one, well, Ellen didn't follow her. She didn't come to the wedding. So at this point, he had a sudden um, flush, and his heart started beating fast. But yeah, it didn't last long because she didn't come, sorry, she didn't come in the end. So they get married, and a whole year passed, I think, more a year and a half or something like that. Um, yeah, yes, because they went on traveling and all that. So they came back the year after the wedding. Yeah. So a year later, they go to Newport for the holiday, and Newland hears that Ellen and Mrs. Manson are also on the coast, but they are in Portsmouth because Mrs. Manson doesn't like Newport. So Newport and Portsmouth in New Hampshire in America, it's not so far. So, but it's not the same place. Yeah, different city on the coast, eastern coast. So, so Archer and May, they go to visit Mrs. Mingott, who also has a holiday house in next to Newport. So they go to visit Granny Mingott, Mrs. Mingott, in her summer house. And there they learned that Ellen has also visited Mrs. Mingott at the same time. So she's there at the same time. From Portsmouth, she came over to visit her granny. And then Archer is asked by Mrs. Mingott to go fetch Ellen because she is outside. She's on the pier outside near the shore, near the beach. So Archer goes and she's here at the end of the pier and she turned her back. She's facing the ocean and Newland waits. He waits until the boat pass, and if the boat passes after if she doesn't turn around before that boat reaches the island, then he will go without telling her that he was there because he believes that she doesn't know he's there. So he's watching her, he's looking at her from afar, and the boat reaches the island and she didn't turn back. She didn't turn around and he left. So he finds her there, but they don't talk really. So let me know what you think about this behavior. Do you think that was brave? Was he right not to not to go and see her, or should he have gone to see her? How do you feel about his attitude towards Ellen and well, in relation to the situation, I would say. So in chapter 8, they eventually meet perhaps a couple months later or something like that. I think some time later. So they go back to New York, and again, a week later, actually, sorry, my mistake. So a week later, he learns that the Countess is now in Boston at the Parker House Hotel. And there he is his chance to meet her. So straight away, the next day, he takes the train and he lies to Ellen, saying that Mr. Letterblair, his boss, wants him in Boston for business. And actually, I can't remember if this was. Yeah, I think he lies to her. Or there is something like he. I think there are two events where in the original text here it just says that Mr. Letterblair wanted him there on business, but I think that for work, or he asked Mr. Letterblair to go to Boston, and Mr. Letterblair said, "Okay," I can't remember. Anyway, but I think that he kind of pushed the thing. Anyway, so he goes there, and there he meets Ellen again, and they have time to chat about life and the fact that and what happened in Newport at Granite's house, and the fact that she actually revealed to him that she knew he was there, and she waited to see how he would act, and then when she revealed that she knew he was there and that she didn't turn on purpose, he became honest as well, and he revealed that he is in Boston just to see her, actually not on business, as he mentioned at the beginning when they meet, they when they start talking, he's saying that he's here on business, but then when they carry on their conversation, then he actually tells the truth, and says that he's here actually um, to see her. So then they go in a boat on a little trip on a boat, and and then and then they start arguing in a way about the fact that he feels miserable, he's bored, and he can't stop thinking about her. But she tells him that she also is feeling horrible, that she can't bear it, and that she got away from him. So she left New York to get away from him. Um, so she left New York for Washington to get away from him. And he's unhappy and she's unhappy, but in the same time, he blames her for marrying May, when I would say that he took the decision to marry her as well. And uh, we can see here that she holds the blame for their situation. He blames her for the fact that they can't love openly to each other. So when in the end he asked her not to get divorced, but at the same time she opened his eyes. Um, she opened his eyes to the reality of New York society and the whole circus about the life that has been established for many years. So they blame each other in a way, and this is um, they are in a dead end in a way, dead end situation, because there are no issue now. There is no issue, no exit, because she is actually in Boston to meet her secretary, I mean, her husband's secretary, because her husband wants to get her back and she doesn't want to go back home. So she's still married and he is now married. So this is there is no way for them to be together. Right. So let's get started with chapter 9. Troubles begin. What are they going to do this to? New York is changing, said Mrs. Archer at dinner in the middle of November. She said it every November as the theaters opened and the new season of parties and dinners began. When I was young, It was vulgar to wear a dress in the newest fashion. We always put our new dresses away for a year or two. But now Regina Beaufort wears her new dresses as soon as she buys them. So Regina Beaufort is Beaufort's wife. Remember, Beaufort is the man that archers despises. Sorry. Um, Poor woman, said Mr. Jackson. Her husband's bank is in great trouble now. Beaufort has behaved badly. But Mrs. Archer did not want to speak about something so unpleasant. Money. And now it's normal for people to go to Mrs. Struthers, Struthers, Mrs. Struthers' Sunday party. You know, I've never really forgiven Countess Olenska for being the first of us to go. Oh, Ellen, said May, quietly, her face turning red. I don't think that she cares about society, but nobody knows what she does care about. It was 4 months since Archer last saw Ellen, that hot summer's day in Boston. Archer knew that the whole family, even old Mrs. Mingott, was cross with the Countess for not going back to her husband. So she didn't divorce, but she did not go back to her husband. So she's still in New York. Hi, Kitty. So I am page 52. I've just started reading chapter 9. Okay. Archer knew that the whole family, even old Mrs. Mingott, was cross with the Countess for not going back to her husband. They all agreed that it was the right thing to do. A young woman should be with her husband. But why did May's face turn red when she spoke about her cousin? After dinner, Archer and Mr. Jackson smoked in the library. While the ladies went to the sitting room. You know that the Countess' name is going to be mixed up with Beaufort's, said Mr. Jackson. Maybe he gives her money. What will people say if she goes back to her husband after Beaufort loses all his money? They'll believe that it was true. Archer was burning with anger, but he said nothing. After he and May arrived home, Archer still felt angry. I'm going to Washington on business next week for a few days, he said. Go and see Ellen while you're there, May said, looking him in the eye. Archer immediately understood all the words that she did not say aloud. Her look said, I know that your advice to my cousin is the opposite of what my family wants, that she should not go back to her husband. I know that you want to see Ellen in Washington. And I want you to see her and explain to her what people are saying about her and Beaufort. So this is all the things that he understands from her eyes, just looking at her, and just from the sentence, go and see Ellen while you're there. In the sense that go and tell her that this is not right what she's doing. Over the next few days, the problems at Beaufort's bank got worse. By Wednesday, the bank would not be saved. It was bad for all the banks and terrible for many of Archer's friends and family, who lost a lot of money. So probably that he speculated money and or that He gambled with money, but I think it's more about speculation um, and that's why people lost their money. Then a message arrived for Archer at his office. Please come as soon as you can. Granny has had a stroke. May. He hurried to Mrs. Mingott's, where May met him in the hall. He was relieved to hear that Mrs. Mingott was already able to speak a little. Poor Mrs. Mingott. The doctor is sure that she'll get well, said May. But can you believe that Mrs. Beaufort was here yesterday evening asking for Granny's help? And then Granny had the stroke in the night. Granny wanted us to send Ellen a telegram, too. So she's arriving from Washington tomorrow. So he didn't really get the chance to go to Washington. Now that what happened to Mrs. Mingott. So now Ellen is coming to New York. I don't know who can meet her at the station in Jersey City. It takes 2 hours each way. I could go. Said Archer. I can get away from the office for a while if I can take your carriage. His heart was beating very fast, thinking about 2 hours alone with Ellen. So if you've seen the film, there is this famous scene in the carriage. Where they're together. Right, let's continue. But aren't you going to Washington tomorrow? She's not losing the sight of the thing. Oh, I'm not going. Mr. Letterblair is going first, and I'm going later. Archer hated lying, but he hated the game that May was playing even more. She knew that he was lying. So that's the second time. That's why earlier I was confused. He actually lied both time, basically. The next afternoon, Archer walked impatiently up and down Jersey City Station, waiting for the Washington train, saying to himself, the whole 2 whole hours together, maybe more. So he's full of hope here that he will spend time with Ellen. Then, suddenly, Ellen was at his side, looking pale and surprised. He took her by the hand, promising that her grandmother was not in danger. Inside the carriage, he took her hand again and kissed it. Before this happened, I was planning to come to Washington to see you, he said. She turned to look out the window. Oh, Ellen, he cried, you must see that this can't last. Our being together and not together. It was a mistake for you to come today, she said, quietly, still looking out the window. Then, suddenly, she turned, threw her arms around him, and kissed him. The next moment, she quickly pulled away from him as a light shone into the carriage. I want more than an hour or two with you every now and then, he cried. You choose a strange place to tell me. In your wife's carriage? Should we get out and walk? No, because I have to get to Granny's as quickly as possible. We must look at our real lives, not dreams. For me, this is the only real life, he replied. So remember, now Archer is so unsatisfied with this real life that for him, this dream of this relationship that he has with the Countess is reality for him. So he's caught up in his own dream. Is your idea for me to be your lover then? Because I can't be your wife? She asked. Archer was shocked. I want to go away with you to a world where we'll just be two people in love. She gave a sad smile. Where is that country? Many people have tried to find it, but they never do. Then what is your plan for us? Asked Archer. For us? But there is no us. I can only be near you if I stay away from you. And it is the same for you. Then we can be ourselves. Quite like this passage. Archer could not speak for the pain. Then he knocked on the roof of the carriage and the driver stopped. I'll get out here, he said to Ellen, opening the door. Quite upset. You're right. It was a mistake for me to come today. He turned away and his face was wet. So here's a lovely picture of the carriage, and you see Ellen here and Archer outside of the carriage, and he let her go. So he leaves the carriage and he stays on them on the pavement and walks home. So, chapter 10, hope for the future. Who knew? Okay. So this chapter, we can see sort of an ending of their dream together, of their relationship. Here. This is it. Okay. Hope for the future. What happened to you earlier, dear? May said brightly when Archer got home. I was waiting at Granny's and Ellen came alone. He knew that she was angry with him, but she was hiding her true feelings. I had some letters to finish at the office. He lied. Archer was tired of living like this. May could never surprise him with a new idea or feeling. Suddenly, he stood up and went to the window. What's the matter? May asked. I need some air, he said, opening the curtains and then the window. He put his head out into the cold night air and looked at the houses across the street, knowing that there were other lives outside of his own knowing that there were other lives outside of his own made it easier to breathe. Newland, shut the window. You'll catch your death of cold, May said after a few minutes. Archer said nothing. But I'm already dead inside. He thought. Didn't say it, he thought. I've been dead for months and months. Then suddenly the idea of May dying came into his head. That's not nice. One day he might be free. He was not shocked by the thought because it felt so strange. Newland, are you ill? Asked May. I'm fine, he said, shaking his head and laughing. Poor May. I'll never be able to open a window without you worrying. I shall never worry if you're happy, she replied quietly. A week passed and Archer heard nothing from Ellen. Then one day, May's godmother wanted to see him alone. His heart was beating wildly as he stood at Mrs. Mingott's door, hoping that Ellen might open it. But a servant came to the door and showed him to Mrs. Mingott's room. The old lady sat in her huge chair. Am I very ugly? She asked him with a laugh. Not at all. You're more beautiful than ever, Archer replied. Oh, but not as beautiful as Ellen, the old lady said, her eyes shining. Did you admire her when you brought her here in the carriage? Did you tell her? And then you had to get out? I've always been sorry that she didn't marry you. Again, you remember this conversation that she had with Archer about the fact that she wished that he had married her, he had married Ellen, or that she thought that he would marry her. And again, she speaks about it. So she kind of stirring the knife again. Archer thought that the old woman might be crazy. Anyway, she's staying, Mrs. Mingott went on. The whole family have tried telling me that what to do. If I don't give her any money, she'll have to go back to her husband, they say. But I want her to stay. She's going to live here and look after me, and I'll pay her. Archer's mind was full of wild thoughts. Was Ellen staying because of him? She must never go back, he cried. I know that you're on her side, replied the old lady. That's why I sent for you today. You see, the family doesn't want her here, and I'm not strong enough to fight them. You have to help me. If you need my help, you have it, he answered. And when will I see the Countess? He asked. The old lady laughed. Not today. She's gone to see Regina Beaufort, another unhappy woman with a terrible husband. They are brave women, both of them. Archer took Mrs. Mingott's. So not only Beaufort has played with money, he gambled and speculates with people's money, but on top of it, he's cheating on his wife as well. So has to bear those shame, this double shame. Archer took Mrs. Mingott's hand and kissed it. The old lady laughed again. I hope that you were thinking about kissing your wife's hand just then, young man, not someone else's. She's so. Tell me what you think about Mrs. Mingott's character. I quite like her character. She is very witty and a little bit naughty as well. I don't know the way that she is um, I forgot the expression to say that she's joking with she's teasing, yeah. So she's teasing Newland Archer about Ellen and and I quite like her character. She's very strong-headed, a strong-headed woman. She has her own mind, and she wants to stand up against the whole family, but she's an old lady at the same time. So she's she doesn't have the strength uh, that she used to before. Yeah. Um, so Archer walked home, shocked by Mrs. Mingott's news. He was disappointed not to see Ellen and talk to her. In his mind, he had a picture of going to Washington with her and then going anywhere, even Japan. But now he was back at his own front door and his old life with May. So it's interesting to see that the he considers his life as old life with May, although they just been married for a year. So they're actually a brand new couple, but it feels old, settled, and boring in a way. But now he was back at his own front door and his old life with May. He passed his house and kept walking until he came to the Beauforts. There he stood waiting for Ellen to come out. At last she appeared and came down the steps. Ellen, he said quickly, I must see you tomorrow. Meet me at the Metropolitan Museum at 2:30 p.m. The new Metropolitan Museum was empty. They sat in a room full of broken things from people's lives thousands of years ago. It's sad that these things don't matter anymore, and the people who owned them are forgotten, Ellen said quietly. But everything about you matters, Archer replied, being very uh, uh, romantic here. So look at these two. So they are the museum you can see. And remember here they mentioned the new part of the new Metropolitan Museum. Yeah. So it's quite interesting to see that where they meet is looking towards the future. These two characters represent the new New York, the new vision of New York, the future. Hence the title, Hope for the Future. Although for these two characters, there isn't very much hope. Why have you decided to stay in New York? Were you afraid of me coming to Washington? I'll be safer here. Safer from me? Safer from hurting people. Isn't that what you always wanted? Ellen began to cry. To have you here, but out of reach, to meet in secret. No, it's the opposite of what I want. And me too. Then what do you think is better? He cried, jumping up. What can I do? I can't hurt people who've helped me build my life here, who've helped me build my life again. Don't let's be like all the others. She stood up. I must go. She turned away and he caught her by the hand. Her face was wet and she saw that her eyes were shining with love. Then she pulled her hand away and hurried across the room. She reached the door, looked back for a moment, and was gone. When Archer got home, he sat in his library without moving. Finally, the door opened and May came in. I'm sorry that I'm so late, she said. I went to see Granny, and then Ellen came in, so I stayed, and I had a long talk with her. May sat down opposite her husband, waiting for him to say something, but he was silent. She was so dear, just like the old Ellen. I think that I've been unkind to her. May stopped again. She hates Ellen, Archer was thinking, but she's trying not to. But she wants my help, and she wants my help. We're going out to dinner, aren't we? We're going out to dinner, aren't we? He said, getting up. May stood up too and moved toward him, putting her arms round his neck. You haven't kissed me today, she said. And this is the end of chapter 10 and the end of our session today. Um, right. So this is it. So actually, at the carriage, it was sort of reaching the end, but then they meet again at the museum, and now this is officially the end of their relationship and well, their meetings, I guess. Um, they might not meet again. Do you think? What do you think? What do you think the end is going to be? Tell me in the comments, what do you think is going to happen for these two? Are they going to manage to find each other later on in life, or are they going to escape and fly away somewhere? Uh, or not? Or are they going to ever see each other again? Hmm, good question. Right. I hope that you'll be able to join the conversation in the live workshop so that you can share your views and your ideas about the characters and this story, this fascinating story. Well, I hope you enjoyed this live reading and make sure you subscribe to the book club as well for our second live workshop session happening this Saturday at 9 a.m. Central European Time. And I wish you a beautiful rest of the day. I will see you tomorrow at 6:30 6:30 p.m. Central European Time for our last. Tomorrow is going to be our last live read along session. We will read the final two chapters, 11 and 12. And I hope to see you there. Bye. Bye bye.